I never really knew my father, but I always used to think it was Mick Jagger. Yeah, who's your favourite? We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather today, the Noongar Wadandi Mort. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging.
Scratch the surface and everyone has a story. Welcome, Kaya, to the Wisdom of Women.
Having worked as a fashion and product designer for 25 plus years, now, 50 years old, clueless, confused, and still questioning her life choices.
Yes, it is time to scratch the surface of our very own Jo Eaton. Now, Jo, your mind-boggling life, and it is a mind-boggling life, begins with sex and conception.
Yes, my conception, which can I just say was I got to find out, because we don't all know where we were conceived, but I was conceived in WA, Scarborough, but I was born in New South Wales, and then I lived in WA. It's bone of contention all my life. Why wasn't I born in WA?
Oh, I was going to ask. So you wanted to be a sand groper?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm actually not.
That's all right.
Officially, but unofficially
okay.
I am, because I say where I was conceived is where I'm from.
Oh.
Okay? That's what I say about me.
I can't say that I'd be willing to probably ask my mum and dad where I was.
I am never going to
conceived.
ask.
I know.
But you guys are okay because you're WA born and bred.
Oh, okay.
Doesn't matter about your conception.
No, I used to lie about being born in Albany because I wanted to be more exciting.
Than being born in Bunbury.
It is exciting.
That's tragic, isn't it?
It is an exciting place. I would love to have been born there, but no, New South Wales. Nothing wrong with New South Wales. I do love it. And it was the Hunter Valley, so I can't complain. It was a beautiful place.
That's all right. There are worse places to be
Absolutely.
Conceived in. The back seat of a van.
Well, I think it was actually a room, so it was the 60s.
Good
Could have
choice.
been.
Yeah.
God.
Sorry, Mummy.
All right.
Anyway, so yes, my life started, really set the tone. The day I was born set the tone of my life, because I was born on the 1st of April, 1969.
We love this.
I love that year,
Yeah,
God.
Yeah.
I know.
It's like the perfect storm of day and time.
It is, yeah. And I always say, if you're born on April Fool's Day, you're exempt from being a fool.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it's true.
I don't know about that, Jo.
No,
You are a fool every single day of the year except that day.
Except that day.
It's just
Thank
like a
you, Sid.
switch,
Yeah,
yeah.
I guess that's another way of looking at it. Thank you. So I was born to a single mum in the 60s. She refused to marry my father. I think she knew he wasn't the love of her life, and she wasn't ready to go there. And I think that's really good, because...
That's interesting because she would have been under immense pressure back in those days.
Well, she was 18, 19 when she found out she was
young.
pregnant.
So,
And
very scandalous.
very, and a lot of relatives since have come up to my mum and said, "Oh, I'm so proud you didn't marry him.
Yeah.
I wish I'd done that." You know,
Yeah.
people who are married to our relatives. So you just think, okay, there's a lot of it that happens. We know that sex before marriage happens, and it happened back then.
Yeah.
So-
yes. Since the dawn of time.
Anyway, I never really knew my father until I was about 14. Then I found out who he was. But I always used to think it was Mick Jagger, because my mum was a huge Rolling Stones fan, and my cousins used to point at people on the telly and say, "That's your dad.
So
that's your dad."
So just some random
Yeah,
male could
they just
potentially...
pick it out, because they had no clue either.
Yeah, so you actually have 50 dads, don't you, Jo?
50 dads. I actually have a few, but biologically, I was really thinking it was Mick Jagger. My mum loved Mick Jagger, and when he came to Perth in the 60s, my mum and her girlfriends went and saw the Stones, and she always says they snuck into a rehearsal, and she was chasing Mick Jagger, and she kissed him. But she kissed him, she was running, and she's grabbed him, and the only thing she could grab was his bum.
Are you kidding
So
me?
my mum's kissed Mick Jagger's butt.
What a great yarn.
Yeah, so you can see why I actually thought there's a chance here
Oh,
that
Jo.
he's my dad,
A chance.
because my mum kissed Mick Jagger's butt. Turns out he's not. I'm not Mick Jagger's daughter.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Great to clarify that.
I will clarify that. Yes, quite
Better.
the beginning. So I was like I've said before, I was born in in New South Wales. My mum was very
Sadly.
upset because it was the 1st of April. I was mistaken for an Aboriginal baby a lot, which I will talk about that later because it does come back up. I've never identified as Aboriginal, and I never thought that was
Part of your heritage.
part of my heritage. So I will talk about that though. My mum being young and single, without much support, being the 60s early and into the early 70s, and even now, being a single woman with a child is very hard. You got to navigate work and a child. So she was told by my grandmother's rather snooty doctor that if she doesn't put me up for adoption, we will both be in the gutter.
No, that's harsh words.
No, it was hard. So she compromised and put me in foster care. So that was really, really great. So I was in foster care, and then
So pretty much from, what, a few weeks, couple of months
a few
after
months,
you were born?
I think. Yeah,
You've gone.
gone into that. And when I found out that I was in foster care, I was 18. I just turned 18, and I was living in Perth, and I was going to TAFE, and the reception lady at TAFE called me after school one day and said, "Oh, love, I've had a woman call. She says she's your foster mother and she needs to talk to you about something now that you're 18. I've gone, "Oh, and look, you've got the wrong Joe. Blah, blah, blah." "No, love, I think you better ring your mum because
Oh, my
it's you."
goodness.
I was like, "Oh." So I ring my mum and I'm like, "Mum, this woman is saying this, blah, 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 blah." And there's this other woman who's apparently my foster mother. And it went silent on the phone. So my mum was like, because when do you pick a time to tell your child about things like
Yeah.
that?
So you're telling me, though, you found out from a complete stranger.
A complete stranger, yeah. And it was interesting because I'd met this student at TAFE, and she'd come home with me for the first time, and we were going to hang out, and we were thinking of moving in together. So she, first time in my home, and the phone rings, and I'm going, "I've got
Wow.
a foster mother," and she's looking at me going, "Oh my God, this is
Did she run for the
fascinating."
hills?
No, she was not. "This is awesome." So, so my mum did say, "No, it is you, and you were in foster care." So I was kind of shocked, but at that age too, I never
So
wanted.
was she acknowledging and saying, "Look, I'm really sorry I haven't told you before now"?
I
Or
don't.
like
She
how?
didn't use those words. I think she was just as shocked that it had come out this way. And over the years, I've been very angry with my mum over the way I found out, because you can imagine being 18,
Yeah,
being
that's-
being young and immature, and but just learning to deal with life. It is quite a shock.
It would totally
Yeah.
change what you thought your life up to then
It did.
had been.
It did, and but then it said it kind of explained to me why mum is so standoffish sometimes. Maybe why we're not as close as other mums and daughters. Maybe that's why.
You thought possibly that there was a connection,
Yeah.
that maternal connection might have
Been broken.
affected.
Yeah, totally. But it's kind of weird because when I think back to my before I was 6 or 7, I thought mum and I were really close. I mean, mum was my goddess. She was young, beautiful, blonde, gorgeous. My mum, and I thought she was everything. So, but then I've realised that it's things my mum was holding. And things that you said, Shauna, how you hold things, is the things we carry within us. And I think that's what she was doing.
Yeah.
So anyway, she came up to Perth that weekend or the next week, and we went out for dinner, and she explained what had happened. Not completely everything, because she still had a few things that she needed to keep to herself. And we went and we met this foster family. And that was really weird and awkward.
Would have been.
I've walked into this house and I've looked around, there's photos of me as a little kid.
I just can't even fathom
Yeah.
that.
Going into a stranger's house and
Stranger's
seeing
house.
photos of yourself
And
everywhere.
I didn't have any feeling of recognition. I just thought it was really odd. They were lovely. They were really nice people. But sitting on the floor was a little girl, probably 2-3 years younger than I was, and she was doing her homework, and her name was Jo. So it turns out that when my mum had put me into foster care, she still had visitation. So she would come and get me on her days off. My mum worked as a nurse, so she did shift work. So she would come and get me, and I'd stay with my mum. And in fact, she was with me on the, I think it must have been my first Christmas. Yeah, my first Christmas. She was invited over for Christmas Eve with the family, and they were all in another room. I think Mum and I must have been in the lounge or whatever, and she's gone, quick, Joe's walking. So I walked Christmas Eve because I am that gift.
Oh, you are the gift.
I am the gift.
You delivered, didn't you? Yeah. So what a beautiful gift for your mum.
Yeah.
So she saw you walk for your first time.
Yeah. And
which is every parent's momentous
beautiful.
milestone.
Yeah. And it was nice that she could share it with that family, I think, because they were there looking after me and they cared for me. I didn't realise how much they cared for me until many years later. In fact, only a few years ago I realised.
And from your mother's perspective as well, here's this woman under, and I gather, immense sort of stigma and pressure of those days, trying to do the best that she can.
Yeah. Yeah. She was young, and they were in their maybe 30s or 40s.
Yeah, okay.
And of course, they were very religious. They were pretty well-to-do. So who's this woman, this young girl, this young flibbity-gibbet with a daughter coming over? But my mum, to her credit, would never let me go completely. So this family decided that they would sue my mum for custody of me. And she had given notice to Child Services that she was going to take me back.
What kind of period of time are we talking? How long had you been?
A couple of years.
Yeah, okay.
So my mum had been working as a nurse. She's realised she can't do shift work with a child. So she got herself a job in the state laboratories in Cottesloe. And we lived in Mozzie Park. So everything was kind of in a little circle for her. And they were all the other side of South Perth. So this was kind of where my grandmother was. It kind of all worked. So she said, I'm going to give notice now that I want Joe back. And I think it was an hour before she was due to leave work and come and permanently pick me up. She was told in a phone call that they're suing for custody and she is not to come near the house.
Oh, I can't imagine.
There was going to be a court hearing in a couple of weeks, and I only just found this out a few weeks ago. So my mum's been carrying this for a while. And it must have been extremely stressful. She said she had amazing bosses. They were male bosses and they were fantastic, and one of them went in and it was 70s, so he's opened his drawer and he's given her a brandy or whatever and said, here, take this, Karen.
You need a stiff drink.
Yeah. And she had a wonderful caseworker at Child Services, so that when they were at court, so it was a closed court, no, get out, and the judge said that, look, she could see, he or she, I don't know, he could see that my mum wanted to keep me. What can we do? This family had noted every time my mum had a headache. They would say that when I went with my mum, I would scream and cry, and I didn't want to go. So mum's caseworker said, look, make Jo a ward of the state. She'll continue living with these people. We can get you supervised visits so we can observe how you are as a mother and how your child responds. This is probably the quickest and best option.
So for a mum to get her natural born daughter back into her arms, she would have to go through the process.
Yeah. Now, my mum wasn't a drunk. She wasn't a drug user. She wasn't out every night. She had a constant partner. He'd been there since I was born, really. She had there was consistency to her life. So it was, I think it's quite bizarre and very sad.
Yeah.
But anyway, so she did.
Yeah.
She didn't want to, but she made me a ward of the state. And she had a supervised visit where I was picked up and taken to my mum and blah, blah, blah. And then happened again. And I would cry when I went back to them. Because I think I knew that this is my mum.
Yeah.
You know, as much as these people are wonderful, this is my mum. And my mum was a good mum. She was a good person. So that was due to be a court case, but the caseworker said, no, said to the judge, no, give her back. That was it. So mum actually did get me back.
Oh, wow.
Without having to go through all that battle. The foster family were banned from fostering children anymore.
Okay.
Which hit them hard. They had a permanent foster child with them who lived with them forever, and she's still one of their daughters. Her mother would never give her up for adoption, but she didn't want her back. So that was okay. But they were banned. As it happens, a couple of years after this, my foster mother fell pregnant, and that's when she had the child that she named after me.
Named after you.
Which made me think, when I was young and 18, I thought, ew, weird, get over it. But actually looking back now, I just see that the pain and the grief affects people.
And all.
And this lady suffered for years, I think. In fact, I know that she carried me with her until she passed away, which is about 5 years ago.
So, and you, how did you feel about this when you first heard about you were fostered?
I was really angry. I was very angry with my mum, but I was also angry with my greater family because I have a great family. And where were my grandparents? Where's my grandmother? Where were my great grandparents who weren't? They were pretty wealthy people. They were retired. They had time. Where were they?
So the expectation was, why did they not step in and take me?
Well, that's what I was thinking. My great grandparents by then had passed away, so I couldn't ask them. There's things that I wouldn't. I didn't ask my grandma because I didn't want to disrespect her that way. I was a bit scared of her. My sister did, but she said she was shut down and she didn't ask anymore. So I think there was a little bit of guilt there. And also, like Mum said, you've got to understand that they had lives of their own and things happening in their lives as well. And it was a different time.
I was going to say as well, that stigma still would have carried through that period of years as well. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to imagine because nowadays that's not something that anyone would worry about.
Mum said her godmother was amazing. Her godmother, we lived with her for the first few months, and that's when the doctor said, look, you've got to do something. So her godmother was fantastic, and people were trying, I think. But they didn't. My great-grandparents, who I adore and miss now, were Catholic, and they didn't mind that my mum had me out of wedlock. I think there were other things happening. They didn't like divorce, so that was something that came later.
A triple whammy to the whole Catholic scenario.
So you can see why my mum left the Catholic Church eventually.
Well, she wasn't fitting in, Joy.
Oh my God! So, how much can I take? So
there's only so much confessional you can go to each week.
So she got me back. We lived okay. We had a nice life. We lived just up the road from my grandmother. But things all started to settle down.
Yeah.
Literally, we could stand at the window of our flat in Mozzie Park and look down the street and see my grandmother's place where she lived. And she would look up and to see, and if my Raggedy Ann doll was in the window, it meant we were home.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
That's so sweet.
If it wasn't, we weren't there. So it was kind of nice. It was nice. And then my mum decided to move to the country. She had some health issues. And so we moved to the country where her sister was living. And that's when it all changed because I wasn't a spoilt child or anything like that, but it was just me and my mum.
Oh, you were an only child.
I was an only child.
Got all the attention.
Yeah. I would play by myself for hours. I was a pretty self-contained child.
So what a huge change.
Yeah, moving to the country from, I remember my mum's boyfriend, they had broken up by then, but he would pick me up at, say, 6:30 or something. He'd go to the beach, I'd watch him surf, and then he'd drop me off at Kindy or wherever. He's a Tupperware salesman, so he was amazing. He's really famous throughout the Tupperware world. He was amazing. He's amazing. And so then I had a nice life. It was lovely. And then I'm stuck in the bush. But Mum promptly fell in love with this man who had two boys, and we had become a blended family. Blended is a new term. Back then it was a step family. And one of my brothers used to always say stepsister.
Oh, this has got all the connotations of a Cinderella story.
It was terrible. But how do you navigate that? Back in even before the 70s, no one talked about it. You didn't talk about it, you just got on with it. And kids, my dad in particular, the man I call my dad is my stepfather, he's my dad. He was very Victorian in his beliefs. Children should be rarely seen and never heard, right? So it was like, just get on with it. Yeah. Just get on with it.
Yeah, yeah.
We'd have to sit at the dinner table and listen to Acker Bilk whether we liked it or not. Those of you who know, he's a clarinet player, Sid.
Really?
Yes, and was very big in the 70s and 80s. Yeah. Akabil, Demis Roussos.
Oh, yeah.
So
Neil
we-
Diamond.
And we weren't to speak. We sit and eat.
Yeah. Elbows off the table.
Oh, God, yeah.
Nice
You know,
table manners.
We had all that.
Families used to actually sit around the table
Yes.
back in those days.
So it was hard. My brothers, like I have said before, they came from having a mum, and the mum left them, and she moved to New Zealand. So it was hard. One of my brothers really didn't talk about it. He just became sports fanatic. He was never home. The other one really carried it. He carried a lot in him, actually. And
Well, I imagine that they would have gone through quite a sense of abandonment in that
Yes.
way.
Yeah, I think they did. Luckily, my dad's mother, a lovely Scottish woman, she was there to help navigate that. She was there for Mum. She moved over from Melbourne to help with the kids, and she was amazing. She was always very fair, even, and it didn't matter that I wasn't her blood granddaughter. I was her granddaughter.
I love that.
No ifs or buts.
Yeah.
That was it. She helped me deal with one of my brothers because he was kind of violent sometimes because he was so conflicted
Yeah.
with what was happening to him. He's happy now.
Oh, and he is gorgeous.
He's got 3 children of his own,
Yeah.
having been married, and he's now got a granddaughter. So he's good. He's great. My other brother's great. He's got 2 wonderful kids. So we all got there. Somehow it was like a Lord of the Flies at times, but then I would put it down to the 70s, really.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a different era.
Yeah, so I had gone through this phase of wondering who I am and how I fit into this family dynamic. I didn't ever feel like I was part of a family, but you know, they were in love, and my mum.
Well, and look, supposedly all parents have a favourite child
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
There's a
Who's
theory.
Yeah,
who's your favourite?
It's you, my darling. Only you.
Nice.
You today at
of
the moment
course
at
it
this
is.
point in time.
Oof.
Yeah.
Let's just hope the boys don't listen to this.
I don't think my mum and dad have favourites. And I always tease her. I remember Mum's 60th, and I was going, so the golden child, and we just laugh and joke about it. But it's nice, and we all got through it. And my mum was only 27 when she had my sister, so it's not like
So
she,
young.
yeah, you know. So it is young, and
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So my sister's all right. She's doing well. She's got a life. And Mum and I, over the years, we've had our issues. I remember being 19, standing in a cupboard, yelling at my mum because I felt so abandoned, so unloved. But, you know, irrational, hormonal.
No, but
And
considering the
going
background as well.
Going through a
that's-
lot. And I think Mum was kind of looking at me going, I don't know how to deal with this person, you know, because I decided I wanted to kind of figure things out. I found that I was going through a stage where I was going to just get down and be a bit of a bitter person when I was about 19, thinking the weight of this and the fact that I felt so unloved, you know, the drama of it all. Oh, nobody loved me, blah, blah, blah.
And you are so far beyond that. So what happened? Clearly. something.
Women in my life. I fell in love with a boy, and I lived in Geraldton, and I fell in love with a boy, and his mother is one of these amazing women who will just envelop the world with a hug.
Oh.
You know, she had 5 kids of her own, and we would spend nights just talking, and we talked throughout the night. She would drink, and I would have tea, and everyone would get up the next morning. We were still going, you know.
Love that. That's a good
all the time.
conversation.
Oh, we used to call them Liz's lectures, and if you didn't get a lecture from Liz, well, she didn't really love you like she loved us.
Oh, she didn't care enough to lecture you.
Yeah. So she really helped me, and she kind of pulled from me how I felt and maybe put into perspective what my mum might have been going through. So her helping me, I think it made me appreciate that my mum did a good job.
Yeah.
She did the best she could without a lot of support.
She most certainly did.
Yeah. And about 5 years ago, I was taking my son to a Justin Bieber concert. And I got a phone call from this lady, and she said, oh, I'm so-and-so, and I'm the foster mother's daughter, who I would have known as a child, but didn't. She said, look, I just wanted to tell you Mum's died, and we wanted to know if you would come to the funeral. So I was like, well, I'm just going to a concert. Can I call you tomorrow?
Wow.
Because it was like, Because before I had my son, I had written to my foster mother. just to kind of get through some issues. Actually, it was after I had my son. Sorry, it was during my divorce, and I was worried that my ex-husband was going to run off with my son. And my therapist counsellor said, "I think you've got abandonment issues. What's happened in your life?" And I was like, "As if I've got abandonment issues."
Yeah.
But anyway,
Hello, let me unpack the baggage.
She said, maybe write your foster mother a letter and tell her how you feel with the gift of age and hindsight.
Yeah.
So I did. I wrote her a letter and I said, "I'm really sorry I haven't kept in touch. It's not that I didn't want to. I just didn't know what to say or how to handle it. And, you know, my mum's my mum and I don't want anyone to think bad things of my mum."
Yep.
And I never heard from her. And I know that they were still at the same address. It's still their house to this day. And I never heard from her. So I was very like, oh, well. And then I kind of forgot about it and just moved on. But this woman rang me and she said, "Look, I don't know how she got my number, but she did some great detective work and she got me." And I think I'd put my number, although my number had changed, she still managed to track me down. I'd even moved houses, but she still managed to track me down.
Because clearly it was important for her to track you down.
Yeah. And so I said, okay. So I went to the funeral on this Friday by myself, thinking, just stand up the back and pay my respects and get out of there, because I don't remember anything.
God.
I don't know if it's I deliberately don't remember anything. I don't know. So as I got there, these people were just coming up to me going, "Joanna, Joanna, oh my God, it's Joanna." It's like, oh my, hi.
Who are these people?
I'm so sorry for you. You must be so sad. And then, so my foster sister was there. The other daughter who had been fostered like me, she was there. She was very emotional, and because she was closer to me in age. She was probably 4 years older than me, and she remembers me.
You were probably
And
her little baby.
I
that
was
she would
her
have
little
hauled around.
doll. I had no idea. And then there were, of course, Joe,
Yep.
who kind of eyed me up and down because I didn't realise she was not living in my shadow, but she was named after someone that she never knew,
Okay.
who'd been there before her.
You're the version 1.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of a strange thing. But they wouldn't let me sit at the back. I had to sit at the front pew. They wouldn't let me stand back when they went up to the coffin to put the rosemary on it. I had to be up there too. And it was really nice, but it was odd because I don't remember anybody or anything.
So you've got
Was it
no
confronting?
Yeah. No memory.
no recollection.
No. And I was fascinated because, at a funeral we talk about someone's life and where they were born and what they did, and I'm going, wow, this lady. My foster father had passed away years before, so she was the only one there. But at the wake, we had a little wake, and the older one came up to, she was probably 15 years older than me. She came up to me with this bag, and in the bag was a photo album. And she goes, "I don't know if you've got many photos of you in your younger days, but here's a big photo album." And it was all me. Like, I was dressed up like a doll. There was me and the older foster child.
Goodness.
Like, I was her little doll. I was this little princess. I was on people's shoulders.
So you're looking at these photos. How did that make you feel? Because suddenly you have back all this history of you that you never knew existed.
It was weird. Not weird, kind of out of body-ish, without being out of body. I remember when I was about 8 or 9, I used to say to my mum's mum, my grandma in Mozzie Park, "Can you please take me to see Disney on Parade? Can you please take me to see Disney?" "No, because if I take you, you've got to take all the other grandchildren, and it's really expensive." No. And she'd be watering the garden. "No, having a cigarette. No. And I remember being so like, oh, nobody cares. Nobody cares. But I was fixated on Disney on Parade for some reason. Anyway, the very last page of this photo album, there's me at Disney on Parade with the foster family.
Subconsciously it was there.
So strange, yeah. So maybe it was. And there's a little ticket stub.
Oh,
It's like, that's a bit cute.
so adorable.
Yeah.
How was it meeting your biological father for the first time?
Icky, because I was 14. My mum had come to me and we were going to Albany for Christmas. Because Albany, everyone wants to go to that exotic place called Albany.
Yes, be born there.
Yes. So we were going down there to spend it with my cousins and my auntie and uncle, and she goes, "Look, your dad's going to be there?" I said, "Who?" Like,
So
what's
just
his name?
out of the blue, she just says,
Yeah, she
your
kind
dad's
of
going
broached
to
it
be
to me, and I was like, ugh. fine. I didn't really want to because I was 14. Anything to do with an adult is icky, and I wasn't interested. But I kind of had to because we're all going.
Yeah.
So I really didn't have a choice. And then I found his name. Oddly enough, I had always corresponded with his mother for years. So I'd write to my nana. Hello, Nana.
I just find that whole scenario just so incredibly bizarre.
It is bizarre. But I was so scared of upsetting my mum that I never wanted to ask about my dad. At the times I did, I was kind of like, and I guess it was waiting for the right time, waiting for me to be at the right age.
Wow.
But, you know, so my nana used to send me beautiful little Chinese dressing gown type things, and she'd send me coloured popcorn. You know, they're really cool popcorn. It's all different colours.
Well, they're great memories, aren't
From
they?
New South Wales. She'd send them over. And she'd talk about my cousins. I have about 30 cousins on my dad's side.
Yeah.
And she'd say, oh, your cousin so-and-so is getting married and blah, 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 blah. And then this cousin... Blah, blah, blah.
But she never met your biological father until you were 14.
Till I was 14.
So what happened? Tell us about this encounter.
I can't quite remember the actual physically meeting him. I just remember how it felt, which was really uncomfortable when he was like...
So what, you've walked into a room and he's there?
Yeah. Yes. Because he's my mum's sister married a man who is his best friend. So
Right.
that's the connection. The whole group of them went to England together, and that's where they met my auntie and my mum, and, you know, on their travels in the 60s. You know, your little trip to
Yeah.
England that you do.
Yeah.
It's a casual
But,
trip.
but
Yeah.
you've gone to meet him. And
Gone to meet him.
And how did that make
well,
you feel?
he's a cocky little fella, my dad.
Okay.
And he's kind of like, oh, Joe, I'm your dad, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. This is his wife. His wife was there, and my brother and sister, which was weird. But I got on really well with my brother. He's only 2 years younger than me.
Okay.
So we got on really, really well. And my sister was 4 years younger than me, so she really probably got on better with my other sister.
Okay.
and my cousins. So it was weird. I was with my cousins, and it was like, ugh. So we were there for a few days.
It's such an interesting scenario to be in, though.
I remember him trying to talk to me, like one-on-one.
Ew.
And I was like, oh, I'm not going there. No.
So how did that relationship evolve then? Did you then constantly keep in contact with him?
For a while, yes. When I was... They came up to Bunbury after that. They came up to Bunbury for a few days to visit Mum and me.
And you?
And I remember being at the beach with my boyfriend, and we were mucking around in the waves and having a pash and all that. And then all of a sudden my dad's on the beach.
Oh.
I'm going, oh, God.
Oh. He
And I was
knows
like,
how to step back into your life, doesn't he?
please, I'm now going to introduce him to my boyfriend. You know, anyway.
Classic.
So it was icky, as it would be for someone of that age. And then we kept in contact. And then when I was 17 and I finished my TE, I went over there for Christmas. I spent Christmas with them.
Yep.
So we went up to Queensland. So it was my brother. I was 17, my brother was 15, 16, and my little sister was 13. And it's quite funny because we went to Dreamworld, and I didn't look my age, and I've only just started to really look
Oh, like look
my
your
age.
age now.
So
So you looked all of 12.
I did, and my sister was 12, 13. And we'd get into Dreamworld, and we say we're both 12. And they'd just let us in. And then I'd go out to a nightclub with my brother, pretending to be 18. So, you know, I was
the
kind
best
of,
of both worlds.
I was trying to live it. But my dad and I sat down, and he tried to talk to me again about, this is when he said to me, you know, your mum was the love of my life. And I was like, well, your wife's in there. You've been with her forever. I was like, please. I don't think she was. I just think it was, he fancied her and she didn't fancy him back, really. Well, she fancied him enough, but not enough to marry him. And I could see why they would not have got on. They get on really well. They're still in touch with each other. I don't see
But
my dad.
I was going to ask, so how many
So-
occasions? You just don't.
We were always in contact. I went to live in England, and they came to visit me, him and his wife. And then I had an English boyfriend, and we came and did a tour around Australia, and we stayed with them. But it was just weird. They had expectations on us that, well, mostly on my boyfriend. It was just a bit racist, you know, towards the pom. And I just hadn't had the vibe that I just felt like I put in more of the work. So when we left there in August of '94, and I decided, right, I'm not going to call them. They can call me. And he called. No, I did call him. I called him on his birthday, which was in December. And then he never called me.
So for how long? How many years?
Oh, I haven't spoken to him.
So that was it.
So
That was
I
your
went to
last-
England, and I lived my life. And I was like, you know what? I can't be bothered. It's all a bit too hard, and I don't vibe with you. I saw my sister a little bit, and that was fine. But then my brother had turned into a bit of an idiot. So we just didn't click. And so I haven't seen him for going on to 30 years.
How does that sit with you? You're quite happy
I'm
to
fine.
leave that?
Yeah,
That's fine.
look,
just move on and
he's really
done.
good. He's really good friends still with my uncle, and my uncle had a stroke years ago, and he came over to visit him, and I was pregnant, and he rang me out of the blue, and I'd already said to my family, I don't want to talk to him, right? I just don't. But they gave him my number, and he rang, and so I just basically said no, see ya, hung up.
And that was it.
My thing is, he always knew about me. I never really knew about him. He never put in the effort.
Yeah.
So why should I be bothering?
Yeah. Yeah, clearly there's
When there are-
years of resentment
Yeah.
and
But there are people in my life who do care, so I'll just focus on them.
Uh-huh.
He's had some sad times, and I don't wish him any ills. But my ex-husband had a dad who he didn't see for a while, and he always would make an effort. And I kind of think, if you want to ring me and I hang up, because I'm the child, you're the parent, and then you ring me and I hang up, and then you ring me again and hang up, well, then I might talk to you because you're putting in some effort. But he never did. So I kind of think, well, he clearly doesn't miss me. So, and I'm not missing him. I don't speak to my brother or sister. I'm sure they're fine and they have a lovely life. That's great. If something happens to my dad and he, does pass away, that would be very sad for those who love him. But it's not going to be sad for me.
I suppose there is at some point a sense of you have to just accept the way
Yeah.
the situation is, and it's not worth bringing all that angst into your life.
And I think I don't know if it affects my mum, but like I said, she does still speak to him, and this brings me to the thing, because I wanted to know about my heritage and my ancestry.
Yeah, let's flick back to that, because you spoke earlier about when you were first born.
Yeah, well, there was always a rumour that one of our relatives was an Islander princess. Turns out...
Oh, what?
An Islander princess, like from the islands, like a Pacific Islander. But turns out, no, she was an Aboriginal lady. And I think, okay, well, I can see that in my dad. And I can see that in my grandma, because I had met my grandma, who wrote to me a few times.
So what a beautiful, rich tapestry of your ancestry you
Well,
have
yeah.
there.
I know all about the English, the Irish, the Scottish side, the European side. I know all about that history.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty pale and I've got blue eyes. Am I? So I think I will do a DNA test to see. I'll have to...
Yeah, it'd be interesting to find out.
Interesting to find out. Because it might not be. It might be that they had someone in their family. My dad... He just, I can see that in him, but maybe I'm just looking for something that's not there when I look back, because I haven't seen him for a while. But my mum, she's kind of like, yeah, I reckon. And she talks to him, so they share the same ancestry account so that they can.
Okay.
And he's giving that for me, but I'm like, well, whatever.
Also, we'll have to wait and see what unfolds there, Jo.
Yes. But like I say, the women helped me through. Women helped me get through. There was a lady I worked with when I worked in a mining company up in Geraldton at 19, 20, 21. And she would walk in and she was lovely. She was very calm and sweet and lovely and funny, and just nothing seemed to faze her. I'm sure it did.
But on the surface, she was
She was
serene.
amazing. And I thought, I want to be like her, not this bitter person that I think I could be. So she was kind of a role model for me too. And then had this friend Sally, who I went to school with.
Oh, good old Sally.
Good old Sal. And she is always very confident. If you meet her now, she seems very confident. I mean, she's tall, she's gorgeous, she's Sally, right? And I said to her one day, oh, how do you do it? Like, you're so confident all the time, Sal. I was just like, ugh. Now, she's a day older than me. Her day's birthday's the 31st of March. So we're practically twins, even though I'm like 5'1.5" and she's like 5'8" or 9. She's blonde and I'm brunette. But we're practically twins.
Yeah, practically.
So I said, how do you do it? How do you do it? And she said, Jo, I get to a door and I take a deep breath and I'm like, be someone else. You can do this. It's an act. Just do it. And that's how she gets through life, even though she was overwhelmed. You know, she can be overwhelmed because she's had a life. And so I travelled the world. A few months after that, I left Australia and didn't come back for 10 years, really. And I would say, before I'd enter a room, be Sally, be Sally, be Sally. And in fact, one time I did it, and I was in England and I'd only just got to London and I was going down to a cafeteria of a hostel and there was spag bowl on the menu or something, right? And there was this little blonde Aussie chick sitting there, gorgeous. And I went, be Sally, be Sally. And I flicked my hand, I go, hi, is that spag bowl? And she goes, yeah, I've got too much. Do you want to share it with me?
Oh.
And we're still friends.
There began a great
Yeah.
journey.
And it was all because I was channeling Sally.
It all because you faked it till you made it.
And that's one of the things. And all of this stuff, you know, the blended family, the not knowing who am I, how do I fit in, who's my dad. I got a stepdad, but my mum had boyfriends before that. You know, and when Shauna, when you married us a few years ago, my Irish stepdad and my dad were sitting there in conversation. It's just beautiful to think that you can do that. I love that. I've got blended family now within our family. You know, I've got 3 stepchildren who I'd die for. And I don't think I don't make a distinction between how I feel about them to how I feel about my son. I do more for him because he's younger and he's here. They've all flown the nest. But it's hard to navigate. And sometimes I think I'm glad I had that because it makes me more sympathetic to what they might be going through.
Yeah, okay.
My husband comes from a family, they're all still together and they've never had to think about where I come from, who's my mum, who's my dad, who's this person trying to tell me what to do. You're not my real dad, you know. It's nice, yeah.
Yeah, and it is interesting, that concept of just embracing everyone, whether they're blood or not.
Yes.
And that certainly makes it so much easier for everyone to just be a part of the family.
Yes, yeah.
You need to have that ethos.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I went to England, I kind of thought, you know what, I'm running away from everyone. I'm not going to talk to anyone again. But I look back at the letters I sent my mum, and it's too much information, seriously. I was telling them everything, every adventure. Like, Mum, I think I'm going to meet Mick Jagger soon because I was living next door to his brother. So all of this stuff, you know, and I think, no, in spite of it, it could have gone really horribly wrong. I could have turned out to be bitter and twisted and not want to embrace my family. But then I've realised that, you know, I don't think my mum ever intentionally did anything, set out to do anything wrong. She was struggling in a system, and before
she was dealing with what she needed to deal with.
And I did want to mention this. I had been not put in an orphanage, but we go to an orphanage. There's one here, and when I see it, it fills me with anxiety, and I'm not sure why. But because I'd go to that orphanage in the mornings before school and kindergarten. Right. But there was always that with the other kids, you're going to be left here soon. You're going to be left here soon. Okay. But there was always this sense, a horrible feeling in that orphanage of abuse. And I'm not sure if it... Yes, it was happening. Let's be honest. There was stuff happening to that place.
Do you think that you were abused yourself?
Yes, but not there. I think there was some abuse. I think that's why I have blocked stuff out. I have blocked a lot out.
Yeah, right.
I'm working through that with a counsellor who's put it in the most amazing way. She said some amazing things to me. My mum and I have spoken a bit about it, but I think it's a little bit too emotional for my mum at the moment because it's nothing she did. She didn't do anything wrong. No. And like I said to her, I'm here, I'm alive, I'm fine. I'm perfectly fine.
But as a mother, you would hold yourself responsible
for the outcome. Oh, I think so.
Outcome.
Yeah. But so the feelings of, and I just thank my lucky stars that I was never actually put into an orphanage. I was lucky to go into a foster home, and I was lucky to then go back to my mum because I've met some people who did go through that particular orphanage, and they've had a terrible time reconciling everything. Also, one thing my mum did, when she was working at the state labs, she was going through the paperwork for superannuation, and it said in there that children of married couples, if something happens to their parents, will receive superannuation, but not illegitimate children. They get nothing. Nothing.
Yeah.
It's about 1975, 74, 75.
Yeah.
So my mum's gone into the head accountant and she's just gone, what's this?
Excuse me.
What's going to happen to my daughter? And he's like, I've never read that. Because my mum was reading through these contracts and he said, I've never read that because there's something that he was up here and this is down here. So my mum couldn't fight in her position. She couldn't fight for that. He was an accountant and he could take it because he worked for the state laboratory, state government. So he fought on my mum's behalf to get that legislation changed.
Oh,
and it did change.
Kudos to your mother because
Yeah.
that's an incredible fight to take on.
Yeah.
To change legislation like
Well,
that.
she said and this is why I say she worked with some amazing men, because he said, Karen, you can't be the only woman. You can't be the only woman in this situation.
Oh, goodness no.
What can we do? So he fought for her to change that, which is, I think, is huge because,
That's massive.
you know, now kids who, I mean, a lot of children aren't, what's marriage, you know? You don't have to be married to have your family. So most kids would be in that situation had they not
that would
changed
be.
that law
Yeah,
in the
Absolutely would
70s.
be. Wow. Wow. Jo, what an incredible journey we've gone on here.
Yeah.
You have delivered your journey beautifully.
Yeah, thank you, Joe.
And quite frankly, look at you. You're gorgeous thing.
Look, I'm still here.
Turned out great.
Kind of
Still
same.
thinking about
Yeah.
humour. Humour gets us through,
It
I'm
does.
sure.
Big-
Humour and love and all those beautiful wise women
Wise
that were in
women.
your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Aw. Jo, thank you so much
That's okay.
for sharing that.
That's all right.
Oof, can't believe that's a journey.
And if you've been affected by any of the topics discussed, please visit the support links below. And we also have links for show information and to subscribe.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we love a good quote here at the WOW, the Wisdom of Women. And Jo, we're going to ask for one of your favourites.
Okay, so this is my mum's quote. She used to always say this, and I looked it up, and it's the rockiest road leads to the highest peak. But my mum used to say the rockiest road can always be the best because it makes you a stronger person and it makes you who you are. And I used to say that when the boys never had to do the dishes and they didn't have to do their chores, but I always did. And actually, I was the one who could probably survive better.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So yes, the rocky road is often the best.
Yeah, I'm sure we
Yeah.
can all live by that.
Yeah, definitely.
And always remember,
Every day.
You are remarkable.